Something has changed on their end. And I do not mean that in the vague something is shifting kind of way that gets said without real content behind it. I mean, something specific has changed, something internal, something that has been building in them quietly, without announcement, without any visible signal to you that it was happening. And that has now reached a point where it is no longer internal only, where it is beginning to press outward toward expression, toward action, toward you. The person who hurt you, the one whose choices created a wound that you have been living with and healing from and carrying in whatever form it currently lives in you, is in a very different place than they were when they made those choices. And the distance between where they were then and where they are now is the distance of a reckoning, a full, honest, privately conducted reckoning with what they did, what it cost you, and what it has cost them in ways they did not anticipate and were not prepared for. That reckoning is complete. And what follows a completed reckoning, when the person doing the reckoning has arrived at genuine understanding rather than convenient justification, is movement toward the person they wronged, toward the repair they owe, toward the chase that would have been unnecessary if they had simply, at the time, chosen better. They are going to come, not if, when. And today, I am going to tell you everything I am reading about how and why and what it is going to mean for you when they do. Let me take you inside what has been happening in them. Because the chase that is coming did not begin with a decision to chase. It began much earlier than that, with a feeling they were not prepared for. A feeling that arrived in the aftermath of what they did, and that refused to behave the way feelings usually behave when someone has convinced themselves that their choices were justified. It refused to quiet down. It refused to be managed into something more comfortable. It refused to respond to the narratives they tried to construct around it, to make it make sense in a way that did not implicate them too deeply. They told themselves the story that people tell themselves when they have done something they know is wrong but are not yet ready to fully own. They found the version of events that positioned their choices as reasonable, as understandable given the circumstances, as something that any person might have done in their situation. And for a while that story held. For a while the narrative did its job of insulating them from the full weight of what they had chosen. But stories built on partial truth have a particular weakness. They hold during the noise. They hold when there is enough distraction and forward motion and busyness to prevent the quiet from getting too deep. But in the quiet, in the moments when the distraction ends and the noise fades and it is just them and the reality of what they did, the story stops holding. And the feeling that was underneath it, the one that was always there, waiting for the quiet, comes through. And what it says, what it has been saying every time they were quiet enough to hear it, is this: you know what you did. You know what it cost them. And you know that the story you have been telling yourself about it is not the whole truth. Here is what the regret actually looks like from the inside of their experience. Because regret is one of those words that gets used so broadly that it can lose its specificity. And what this person is carrying is specific. It is located. It sits in particular moments, particular memories, particular replays of specific things they said or did or chose or failed to choose that keeps surfacing with a persistence that tells me this is not casual regret. Not the surface level, I wish things had gone differently kind that fades with time and distraction. This is the deeper kind, the kind that has gotten more specific rather than less as time has passed, more precisely located, more directly connected to the understanding of what their choices actually cost you, rather than the comfortable vagueness of general regret that does not require them to fully see the damage. They have been seeing the damage more clearly than at any point before, and seeing it clearly, really seeing it, without the buffer of the story they were telling themselves, has been doing something to them that discomfort alone does not do. It has been changing them, not performing change, undergoing it in the private, unglamorous, nobody is watching way that real change happens when a person stops running from what they know about themselves and turns around and faces it. They turned around. That turning is what I am reading in their energy right now. And the direction they are facing after the turning is you. I want to tell you something specific about what triggered the shift, because reckoning of this depth does not usually begin abstractly. It begins with something concrete, a moment, an encounter, a specific experience that made the abstract real in a way that could not be managed back into comfortable abstraction. Something happened that held up a mirror, not metaphorically, literally in the sense that some experience in their life reflected back to them with uncomfortable precision what it feels like to be on the receiving end of the kind of treatment they gave you. Maybe someone did to them what they did to you. Maybe they watched someone they care about experience something analogous to what you experienced at their hands. Maybe they simply arrived through the accumulation of life experience at a level of self-awareness that was not available to them before. Whatever the specific form of the mirror, the reflection was clear. And in that clarity, the comfortable distance they had been maintaining between themselves and the full reality of what they did to you collapsed suddenly and completely. And what was left when the distance collapsed was not comfortable, but it was honest for the first time, fully, uncomfortably, usefully honest. And that honesty is the foundation of everything that is now moving toward you. The chase does not come from impulse. It does not come from loneliness or from boredom or from the vague nostalgia of someone who misses comfort without having examined why the comfort ended. It comes from a person who has seen themselves clearly, not liked what they saw, and decided to become someone who earns back what they carelessly let go. Now I need to speak to you. Not about them, about you and what is happening in you as this approaches. Because your experience of this situation is not simple. And I do not want to deliver a reading about their chasing and their regret without fully honoring the complexity of what it means to be the person who was hurt, who did the healing, who rebuilt what was damaged, who learned through the particular education of surviving what they did, things about yourself that you could not have learned any other way, things about your own strength, about your capacity to remain whole through situations that were genuinely trying to make you less than whole, about the particular quality of your character that reveals itself most completely, not in the easy moments, but in the ones that required everything you had just to remain yourself. You learn those things at a cost. And you are not the same person you were when they made the choices they made. Not because what they did broke you and rebuilt you into something different, because what they did revealed you to yourself in ways that changed how you understand your own depth, your own resilience, your own non-negotiables. The things you now know with a certainty earned through experience rather than theory that you will not accept again, that you will not adapt to, that you will not make smaller than they are in order to accommodate someone else's inability to meet them. That knowledge is permanent, and it is going to be present in every interaction you have with this person as they chase as a kind of internal standard, a reference point that did not exist before, that now exists clearly, and that is not going anywhere. Let me describe what the chasing is going to look like, because I think having a picture of it before it arrives is going to help you stay grounded inside it rather than being swept up by it in ways that do not serve you. It is going to begin with presence. A renewed, deliberate, noticeably increased presence in the spaces where you exist. Not dramatic, consistent, the kind of presence that communicates without words that someone is paying attention, that they are aware of you in a way that has a particular quality, a particular intentionality, a warmth that is slightly more than ordinary, and that you will feel before you have time to intellectually process what you are feeling. There will be reaching, communication that comes from their end without you having initiated it, that arrives at moments that tell you it was not accidental, that someone thought about whether to send it, decided to, and sent it with the awareness that sending it was a statement about where they are now. There will be the particular quality of attention that belongs specifically to someone who is working to show you something, not telling you they have changed, showing you through the accumulation of small, consistent, quietly meaningful actions that do not ask for immediate acknowledgement, but that build over time into something undeniable, into evidence, the kind that does not require interpretation because it simply is what it is. A person showing up repeatedly with more care and more awareness and more genuine attention to what you need than they ever brought before. That is what the chasing looks like. Not grand gestures that cost nothing to produce and prove nothing by their production. The unglamorous, sustained, day after day showing up, that is the only evidence that actually means anything. I want to address something that I know is sitting in a complex place for many of you right now. The question of whether to let them, whether to allow the chase, whether to receive what is coming with openness or with the particular kind of closedness that has been protecting you since what happened, and that feels in some deep self-preserving part of you like the only sensible response to someone who has already demonstrated what they are capable of. I hear that. I want to honor it completely before I say anything else. The protection is valid. Every layer of it was earned. You did not build it arbitrarily or out of stubbornness or because you are someone who cannot forgive. You built it because the alternative, remaining fully open after what happened, felt like an invitation to more of what you had already been through. And that was a reasonable read of the situation at the time. The protection served you. It got you through the period that needed getting through. What I want to offer you now is not the instruction to dismantle it. It is a question, a genuine one, not rhetorical. Is the protection you built for the person they were still the right size and the right shape for the person they are becoming? Because those are not the same person. And applying the protection designed for the old version to the new version without examining whether it still fits is not the same as wisdom. It might be, it is worth asking. If the reckoning is real, if the change is genuine, if what is showing up in the chasing is actually different in its essential nature from what existed before, then the question of whether to receive it is worth sitting with, honestly. Not rushing toward an answer, but not reflexively answering no before you have actually looked. You deserve to make a conscious choice about this, not a reactive one, not a choice made from the wound rather than from the clarity, from the place in you that knows what you need and what you are worth and what you are willing to offer and on what terms. That place knows. Trust it to guide you more than the fear. Let me speak to the power dynamic that is shifting here, because one of the significant things about what is happening is that the position each of you occupied before is reversing. And I want to talk about what that means, honestly, rather than simply as a satisfying narrative. Before, in the dynamic that allowed the hurt to happen, there was an imbalance. An imbalance in who was more invested, who was doing more of the reaching, who was absorbing more of the cost of keeping the connection alive. And the imbalance was weighted against you. You were giving more, tolerating more, accepting less than you deserved because the alternative was losing something that mattered to you. And they, whether consciously or not, were operating in the comfort of being the less invested person in a dynamic where the other person's investment was reliable, where your care could be taken as a given, where the consequences of their choices were absorbed by you in ways that insulated them from fully feeling those consequences themselves. That insulation is gone now. The absence of you as the reliable absorber of their choices has meant that the consequences have been falling where they belong, on them, and feeling the consequences of what they chose without you there to cushion the impact has been the most effective teacher they have encountered. More effective than anything you said when you were together. More effective than any conversation about what was not working. Because experience in the body, consequence felt directly, produces understanding that words alone cannot produce. They understand now in a way they did not before. And the understanding has shifted what they want. Not toward having someone to absorb their choices, toward being someone whose choices do not require absorbing, toward being the person that a person like you deserves. That is the shift. And it is real. And it changes everything about the terms on which the chase is arriving. I want to name something about your position in all of this, because the chase that is coming places you in a particular kind of power. Not power in the sense of control over someone else, power in the sense of full, conscious, uncompromised agency over what you do next. You hold the response. Whatever they bring, however they show up, whatever the chase looks like when it materializes, the next move is yours entirely. And that is not a small thing for someone who spent a significant period of time in a dynamic where the moves were not evenly yours to make, where the terms were set more by their availability and their choices than by your own agency. That is different now. You are different now. The person who is going to receive this chase is not the person who was in that dynamic. It is the person who survived what followed it, who rebuilt, who found out through the particular education of having to be enough for yourself when someone else chose not to be enough for you, that they are entirely, completely, sufficiently enough, that the thing they were looking for from that person was something they already contained, that the love they wanted to receive was a love they were already capable of generating for themselves. That discovery, that particular independence that comes from learning you are not actually dependent, means that what you offer this person, if you choose to receive their chase, is not the same as what you were offering before. Before, you were offering from a place that needed the offering to be received in a particular way in order to sustain itself. Now you are offering, if you offer from a place of fullness, from a surplus rather than a need, and love offered from surplus is the most powerful thing one human being can bring to another. That is what you carry now. That is what they are chasing. And they may not have the language for it yet, but something in them recognizes it. Something in them knows that what you are now is worth pursuing with everything they have. And they are going to pursue it with a seriousness and a consistency and a humility that was not available to them before. Let me close with this, because there is one thing above everything else that I want to place in you before this reading ends. One thing that I think is the truest thing I can say about where you are and what is coming and what it means. You did not need this. Let me say that again because I want it to land in the right place. You did not need them to come back in order to be okay. You are already okay. More than okay. You are someone who walked through something genuinely difficult and came out the other side with more clarity and more strength and more understanding of your own worth than you had going in. The chasing that is coming is not your rescue. You do not need rescuing. It is something else entirely. It is the universe completing an accounting, returning something to you that was yours. Not because you need it to feel whole, but because you deserve the acknowledgement, the recognition, the direct, humbled, full weight bearing of someone standing in front of you and saying, I was wrong about how I treated you. I understand now what I did not understand then. And I am here because I want to be someone who does better. For you, that acknowledgement is coming, and you are allowed to receive it on your terms, in your time, with the full weight of everything you now know about yourself and what you deserve and what you will and will not accept. Receive it from that place, from the high ground you earned, from the solid, unshakable, nobody can take this from you ground of someone who survived, who healed, who grew, and who is now finally being chased by the very person who underestimated exactly how worth it you always were